I mean, one of the aspects of this particular era that we're entering into, and one of the aspects of AI that we talk about a lot here is its ubiquitousness. That AI is not a vertical; it's horizontal. It's in everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's in everything. It will be in everything as a black box. It will be a black box in your car. It'll be a black box in your refrigerator. It'll be a black box in your phone. It'll be a black box in every app that you see. And so theoretically, we could just trust that, or we could actually understand what's going on. And so it becomes fundamental to everything in a way that, you know, I don't know, even physics and chemistry weren't as fundamental to everything as this will be from an operational perspective. And I don't think we even know how to teach it. You know, I mean, I think it's just happening so rapidly. But you know, I could go on, and we definitely have got to get you to come back. But I'm going to go to one last question here, which is related to this, okay?
Yes.
Because just apropos of what we're talking about, you know, it's taken, I don't know, we can debate it, but like 1,000 years for most universities in the United States and in Europe to stop thinking that only books written by white European men were worth teaching, right? I mean, it's taken
Yes.
a long time, right?
It's taken a while. Yeah.
Well, you know, I thought we were making some progress, but I did listen to the president yesterday. And then, you know, this gets me to my last question, which is he's like, well, here's the thing. We don't want bias built into these systems, which sounds fine, except that what he really means is that they do want bias built into these systems. And he, you know, in the executive orders that he's signing, one of them is like, well, you can't talk about transgenderism, which, you know, I mean, you can't talk about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a bizarre concept, but this idea of saying we will not fund or support woke AI is blazing new territory in fascist suppression of speech. You'll forgive me because I think it's taking us there. Maybe you think I'm overstating it. So
no, I don't. I think it's very, very concerning, and you know, it's the trend of, you know, using words and then doing the opposite, right? So he's saying we don't want bias, but we'll be fine with discriminatory conduct. First, I will say the act of asking companies to even do this, I don't really know how they're going to do that. But okay, that aside, yeah, I think it's just this trend of instilling this kind of fear. It's you know, trying to make his base happy, I guess. It's the way in which, you know, you create this sort of silencing, right? More and more silencing, which has happened at universities, including at Georgetown, right? They canceled so many grants. So you just create this kind of fear in people, and this continues that. I think the censorship, which I think is exactly what it is, you know, it doesn't matter if it makes sense technically. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, something that is going to actually happen at the companies or whatever. It's a way to say we're going to put this out there and we're going to tie money to it and we're going to watch you. Big Brother is going to watch and see, and we will use something if we can just find something, and we'll use it against you, right? I mean, that's kind of what it's about. It's like when Google had the issue with the Black Nazis or whatever, and there was a huge uproar. Then Elon Musk has Grok and it's anti-Semitic or something, and nobody, you know, it wasn't a big deal, right, on the right. So, I mean, it's just sort of cherry picking and using this as a kind of political tool, but it's in the name of fascism and censorship. I agree with you.
well, it's also, you know, there are other dimensions of it. You know, I come from a national security and foreign policy background, and one of the advantages the United States sold for many years was we have an open society and people have access to all information, and that gives them the tools they need to make better
That's true.
decisions.
Yes.
And I've heard conversations about AI, in the not too distant past, where people say, well, the Chinese are going to censor their AI, and so their models aren't going to work as well as ours because there's not going to be key stuff in it.
Right.
And which, by the way, is only partially true because some of their scientific models may have more data on health in it because we're more concerned about privacy, right? So, but the point is, AI and these models work better if you have access to more information.
Right.
And so the more parameters you put that limit what's inside of it being used to, shape answers,
Mm-hmm.
the less useful it's going to be.
That's very true. That's very true. And do we really want people, these engineers or whomever, to go in there and make these changes? I mean, it's exactly, what a lot of conservatives were saying the companies were doing with content moderation before, related to censoring them on social media. But yeah, I think you're right. It's deciding what is fact and what is fiction. For example, you brought up health. Does this mean now that information about the measles and vaccines is going to be considered woke? How will that be determined, right? And obviously that will be determined by the administration. And that's extremely frightening to think of those terms being defined by sort of conspiracy theories or through political factions. So I think that's a very good point that, they could sort of take words and devalue them, like misinformation and fact, right? So we don't have the same understanding of what those mean anymore.
Well, we don't, most people's memories don't go back so far. I was in the Clinton administration. And I remember going around giving loads of speeches in which we were congratulating ourselves on winning the Cold War and saying that the reason the Soviet Union lost the Cold War was they were denying their people access to information about markets and information about reality.
Yeah.
And that was an impediment. And yet here we are 30 years later, kind of looking like we're about to do the same thing.
Yeah. I will say this though, and on a positive note, I do know that there are people at companies in DC, all across the country, that are not okay with all of this. And they are smart, driven people, and they are organized. I'll just put it like that, and are not just saying, okay, we're just gonna go with this, and that's not what's happening. So there are, I guess you could say, pockets of resistance, or at least of differences ideologically, and people who will not allow things to happen. So for me, that's kind of a hopeful thing, not because it's anti-Trump or anti-government or anything like that, but it's just people who believe in the rights that were given to us as Americans. So there are people who stand up for that, and to me, that gives me a lot of hope that these orders or whatever they are not just going to be blindly carried out by people. Because at the end of the day, policy is people, right? And so none of this matters unless it's actually carried out. And so we'll see.
Yep. A good positive note to end on. And it's not just Americans, there are people in other countries who are doing
That's
the
right.
same thing.
Very much.
And I think it's very important to remember periodically just how early we are in this process. And so, we're gonna discover a lot even in the next few years. And hopefully, as we do, maybe we can invite you back to continue the conversation.
Yeah, this is fun. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to meet you and talk with you.